teacher shortage in the United States. Is it real? Is it just media hype? What are the statistics saying, and where are they coming from? What are the problems contributing to teacher salary to all this? Teacher salaries, recruitment strategies, decreasing teaching majors. These and other questions are what we'll be talking and discussing today with our panelists who have their very own experiences on this topic.
Welcome to Teacher Talk Live with your host, Oscar Cielo Staten, and featuring our distinguished guests.
Let's go ahead and introduce our panelists. Go ahead, Dan.
All right, I'm Dan Vanderveeren. I teach 7th through 12th math in a small rural school in Colorado, and this is my second year of teaching.
Awesome. And then Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Beamer, and I am currently a lecturer and a university liaison for the special education department at a university in the Northwest.
Awesome. And then Rob.
Okay, hello everyone. My name's Rob Furman. I'm the elementary principal in South Park School District near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It has nothing to do with the cartoon. And if you get a chance, look me up on Twitter at Dr. Furman.
Nice, nice. So we're gonna go ahead and begin. So our topic today is teacher shortage, and I want to go ahead and begin by talking about the current situation surrounding teacher shortage. What are you guys seeing out there?
Well, I'll start since I already said I'm going to jump all over the place.
All right.
In Pennsylvania specifically, we're having a major problem with not only teacher shortage, but even substitute teacher shortage, and they obviously go hand in hand. The problem that happened to us was about 4+ years back, and I don't want to take this into a political realm, but we had a governor who completely stripped public education financially. Many districts around the area started furloughing teachers. Our district had to furlough 13. That was actually like an average. So it became very painful very quickly. And the kids who were juniors and seniors at that time, 4 years ago, saw all this, felt all this, watched their teachers leaving the classroom not to return, and I think very quickly that became a red light for kids not wanting to go into the profession. Couple that with the national news that we're reading regularly, with public education constantly getting hammered, unions constantly getting hammered. I don't think that kids that are in high school who are thinking about going into the teaching profession are seeing and hearing education as a noble profession like we used to. Now it's the place to get bashed, and that's become a problem. The reason I say 4 years ago is because 4 years ago when kids were not going into the teaching profession, now we have a shortage. We don't have any substitutes. My teachers are covering classes left and right because when 4 years ago kids weren't going into teaching, that means the seniors that would be now, who would be doing their student teaching and coming out as first-year teachers, don't exist. And it's become a problem over the 4 years, and I'm hoping that something changes in the regards that politics and education somehow becoming a political football gives it a little bit of a rest, because we're hurting ourselves, we're hurting our kids, and people are scared to go into this profession because we become the national punching bag.
Rob, I have to say that in my last couple of years teaching, when things were changing so dramatically, I remember just a few years back before this that I would encourage my students, my first generation immigrants, Mexican American immigrants, to become teachers. These were 3rd and 4th graders. I was like, it's such a wonderful profession. It's a way to give back and all that stuff. But in the last 2 years, I can say that I didn't encourage that as much. But it was more because I cared about these students and I cared about their future and what would happen to them. So it wasn't like I was bashing the profession, but I definitely wasn't encouraging it as much, And that's because I wanted good things for them.
And that's absolutely the case that we're seeing here. It's not that we're saying teaching is bad. It's that we're in a sad agreement that teaching right now is kind of a dangerous profession to get in because, yes, we have a shortage right now, but 4 years from now, there not be any teaching jobs available. And that's what happened 4 years ago whenever this furlough hit. They knew that a school district had to hire 13 new teachers or bring back those 13 furloughed teachers before they would even consider giving somebody new right out of college a job. And that scared the kids. That scared them. And you know, as my counselors at the high school and everywhere, it was very hard to push them in that direction when we, as that being our job, our occupation, our livelihood, was feeling it being threatened.
Right.
And that makes it a very scary thing to turn around to a child and say, you should become a teacher. It is a noble profession. We love it, but you may not have any jobs coming up in 4 years. And that scared a lot away.
Or it may be so degrading and difficult for you.
Yeah.
Someone else jump in and tell us what your experience has been. What do you see? And unmute yourself. If you could unmute yourself, Lisa. There
All
you
right.
go.
I think from my perspective, I'm coming from special education background, right? So I'm trying to consider the overwhelming teacher shortage special education has always had. It's not a new issue, and so I suppose I'm trying to compare the experiences we've had in special education and seeing what might be happening in the general education population. So this is going to be a good debate for me in my development. But I think where I see the issue in special education very specifically is that we have a huge demand for this very difficult job and a very low supply of qualified special education teachers coming out of our teacher preparation programs. Because this is a very high demand job and because not a lot of people go into education actually wanting this specific position, we tend to truncate our preparation programs, which is not the answer. So we see this huge demand. We need the supply, so let's pump out these special education teachers, whether or not they're actually ready for the positions that they're going into. Right now we have 11.2% of our special education population, the teachers that actually are underqualified or not qualified for their current position. So that actually means they're not even certified in teaching, let alone in special education. So when we think about that, that's over 45,000 teachers in the U.S. alone that are not currently qualified for the position that they're in. So it kind of amounts to this perpetuating issue of if we're not preparing them correctly, they're not going to last long in the profession anyways. You know, we have a 2.5-year retention rate on average for special education teachers, twice the rate of gen ed teachers. So when we think about that, you know, there's that issue and lack of preparation in our programs, but then a complete disillusionment of the support that they need in the district themselves because we are having to deal with all of these other issues. So with special education, there's this perpetuating issue that we continually see year after year, and a huge lack of resources across the board, right? But you know, special education has been unfunded since its inception. So I'm trying to, in my mind, wrap my head around how have we not solved this for special education, and if we haven't solved it there, what kind of issues are we going to face, and how can we try to solve this for the general population as well?
Lisa, can I say something, Oscar, back to Lisa?
Go ahead.
Because we just had this year, for the first time, a pretty large retirement population. And just very similar to what you're saying, there was not a job available in my district because everyone, just about, of our special education teachers went into the public education classroom.
Yes.
And again, that becomes a problem of consistency and all of those things that you're talking about. So even when there are positions available, it seems like those special ed teachers are wanting to run for the hills. And I get it. That's a really hard job.
Yes.
But we need to, and I'm agreeing with you, we need to find a way to create true special education teachers.
And you know what?
Go ahead.
And you know what? What a way to set them up for failure. You know, because Lisa's talking about truncating the programs and just to get people in there. And special education teachers are so important, and they do such a specialized job that you can't just, you know, teaching in general is specialized enough that you can't just you know, take shortcuts and put just someone in there. That's really harmful for the students.
And
It's
if you
very
think,
harmful. Yeah. Well, sorry to interrupt. And you know, when the 2.5 retention rate is actually special education teachers leaving leaving the profession entirely. So there's a whole different set of statistics that go into what he was mentioning about moving into general education, because that happens very frequently. But that, again, like you were saying, Oscar, kind of makes the issue worse, because when we're at the teacher preparation level, we create programs that get these dual certified teacher candidates. So they have certification in general education and special education, but a large majority of the time they're not going to college much longer than they would to get one initial certification.
Right.
So they're squishing, for lack of a better word, their program, their education, their practice of the profession into the same amount of time where peers are getting one certification.
and maybe that's where the problem is, Lisa, where we are in many. I work in a local university here as well, and we do the same thing. They come out with that dual certification, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe we don't let them go with the dual certification, and we say, if you want to be a special education teacher, then go be a special education teacher. Don't do these 20, 30 different credentials and extra this and extra that, where you don't even have to take classes, just take the test and you get the extra certification, because again, we're thinning out their expertise, and if they don't really want to be there, then they shouldn't be there, because that causes all of the problems that we're discussing.
Right.
Yes.
And if we could take a moment to introduce our other panelist, Chastity.
I am a certified principal right now, looking for a position. I was formerly a teacher in the Ann Arbor Public Schools in Michigan, so I'm a certified teacher and also a certified principal. This topic is very interesting to me because from my own research and my own experience, I think it seems like the issue of teacher shortage, it depends on who's talking about it. It depends on a lot of experience through the research that I've done over the past couple of days. My own personal experience with teacher shortage, the district that I was hired into, they were looking for diversity in the building. There was a lack of diversity in the school district. So they hired me as part of their plan to bring more diversity into the district. I'm sad to say that my experience as a teacher was not very pleasant. I ended up resigning after 7 years, and a lot of that was due to some of the issues that that keep teachers out of the profession. That has to do with lack of support, being unhappy, feeling like you have lack of resources, and so on and so forth.
Right. Dan, tell me your views on the current situation.
I bet he's saying something really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, I was saying something very interesting. Okay. I'm the 7th math teacher at my school. 3 years ago, the math teacher, who was a veteran teacher of 35 years, retired. They had a teacher replace him who only stayed in my school for 1 year and then went back to California. And then this past fall, they were in transition between like about 3 other teachers. And I came halfway through the school year. It was a challenge for sure because of all that had gone on prior to my coming, but just a lot of struggle to fill those positions, especially math and science. I see articles, I hear about this all the time. Math and science and special education, again, really hard to fill. Especially in a rural community, it's hard to get people to live out there. I was living in Arvada when I got hired, so we actually had to move out to a location closer to the school, so I didn't have such a long commute. But it's a challenge to really get qualified teachers especially. Several of my colleagues right now are actually in alternative licensure programs, not even traditional programs to get their teacher's license. It's kind of been almost like an emergency. They had no teaching experience prior to this, and they're taking a couple of online courses while they're starting teaching, like the real deal, getting paid, not getting prepared in a kind of a mentee, if you will, role. They're kind of getting all of the fire in their face right away. So
Dan, could I mention something to that? The and we have similar things here in terms of like emergency certs and things like that, and quick certifications. And in my opinion, no offense to your friends or anything, but I think that is absolutely the worst thing we could be doing for our educational system. Yes, we need teachers, but that doesn't mean that we don't need qualified teachers, teachers that know what they're doing. We're stuck in a perfect storm right now because in one hand we're saying we need teachers, but in the other hand we're saying we need good teachers. So there has to be one of the two have to give. I understand that. But at the end, I really think we need to stop with the emergency certifications, stop with giving them every option under the sun, force the universities to get our certifications aligned to an expertise, so that when they are coming out, they truly want to be teachers and they want to do whatever they're certified to do. Because I was a band director, so I could have taught strings, I could have taught chorus, I could have taught instrumental music, I could have taught anything dealing with music. But that wasn't my expertise. I'm an instrumentalist. So I wouldn't dare take a choir job knowing that I would not be giving the kids the full benefit of a choir teacher. Same thing with elementary, same thing with science and social studies. You had a passion going into teaching to want to teach something. Don't just end up going and grabbing any other cert that you possibly can just so you can get into the job. I understand the fact that, hey, everybody needs a job. You want a job. I get that. But we have to go back to the idea of teaching being that noble profession where it's not just, oh, I can't get a job doing this, that, and the other. Maybe I'll go try to grab a teacher cert because it's so easy to do. Anybody can do it. I think I'll go into the classroom and teach these kids for a couple hours. That's the wrong attitude to have, and it's crushing the reputation of education in America because that's the mindset now. Oh, if I'm in business and I don't like it, I can always go get a teaching degree because that's easy. And we've created that monster.
Right. But, Rob, you have to factor in the teacher's salary. You can't make all those awesome special requests and not pay people money.
Okay.
And you know what? I'll piggyback on Rob there because I feel like I could have just stood up and clapped. I was very excited about what he said. But, I think that at some point, are we talking about a teacher shortage issue or are we talking about a teacher retention issue? Because, there's one purpose of teachers going into the profession and whether or not teacher preparation programs are prepared for that. But how are our districts actually set up in order to support teachers once they're in there? And when there is that lack of retention and there's high turnover rate and teachers getting out the door as quick as they can or really struggling through their first years with a lack of support, what kind of incentive are we truly providing for them to maintain a position regardless of their passion? At some point, me and my family can only take so much of my 12-hour days in the classroom.
Right.
I've got a 10-month little girl I gotta take care of. So at some point, there's got to be things put into place that are appropriate. Rob was talking about districts trying new things, and just a few weeks ago, Kansas determined that in 6 of their districts, they're going to completely remove the obligation of teacher certification. So they're getting content area experts into the buildings in order to teach those subject areas. And when you think about something else, you completely take the education out of it, right?
Wow.
So nothing against content area experts. I bet they're great at what they do. But what they don't do yet and what they haven't been trained to do yet is teach. And it is a specific practice. It is something that we've lost sight of the practice behind it.
Well, we're putting our babies in their hands. These are the families. our babies. These, the parents don't ask for anything special, but they trust us. They trust our schools.
Right, Oscar. Do you remember? I'm sure we've all heard the saying, "Those who can do, and those who can't teach." And you know what? I am totally and completely okay with that. If you can do it, go do it and leave teaching away, because you can do it doesn't mean that you can teach it. And there are two very different methods to the experience, and you've got to accept the fact that if you can do it, I'm so happy for you. Go do it. But don't think that all of a sudden you can turn around and teach it, because that's a whole different beast.
Exactly.
Oscar, back to your concept about money. I don't know anybody that goes into teaching for money, buddy. If you went into education for money, you went into the wrong education. But no, I do know what you're saying, and there has to be some honesty to the money that teachers are making. We still have to make a living. We still have to live our lives. Just like Lisa said, she's got a 10-month-old. I mean, that costs money. So I understand that part of it. But I will take a passionate teacher over someone coming into education for money any day.
Yeah.
Because you could go and work in a business and still be unhappy with the money you're making. So we can't necessarily look at education as a place where you're going to make 6+ figures in a couple of years.
Well, no, Rob, but when I'm talking about money, I'm talking about a salary where Lisa can raise her child. And do you have just one child, Lisa?
Now, yeah.
Yeah, where she can raise her child and have a nice home for her and everything like that. I think that's the least we can expect for teachers.
I couldn't agree more. And in Pennsylvania, I'm in a little bit of a different situation, because our state is, I think, known to pay our teachers really rather well. I wouldn't say anything stellar, but I mean, they're doing okay from the start, where I know places like North Carolina, Las Vegas, Miami-Dade, I think they're paying minimal salaries. West Virginia is another one. But so I completely understand what you're saying. There has to be a reasonable amount of money in order to entice people into the profession.
Yeah.
But I hate to say this, a lot of this stuff goes back to the fact that we are not appreciated as a profession, because they're not willing to give the money to the teachers because they don't appreciate what we do. Let me bash on Texas for a minute, and I apologize to anybody in the Texas area, but if I read it correctly, and I'm pretty sure this was the state, their new Secretary of Education for the state of Pennsylvania was for Texas, yes, was the former president of the Homeschooling Association. There was another state that just hired a Secretary of Education who does not send their kids to public education and vehemently tells the media how much he dislikes public education.
Wow.
Who in their right mind thinks that these two types of individuals are a logical leader for public education? Again, it's a lack of respect for what we do. It's a lack of respect for educators in general. Whenever you're bringing people in that are already against what they're supposed to be the leader of, it's a ridiculous situation.
Right.
I was going to make a comment.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've noticed, at least in Colorado, that the high needs districts actually pay between $3,000 and $4,000, if not more, for the entrance salary. So I actually started teaching in a high needs district, and push came to shove, and I moved to the school where I am now, and I actually took a pay cut. My class sizes were over 30 students, and it was very challenging. And I moved to a school where the class sizes dropped to at most 20, where I have most of my classes are about 15. And so what happened, though, is that I got into my first position because I was thinking, oh, if I can work in a position that I'm making more on average entrance salary than some of my, colleagues who are going into other, school districts, that was an incentive to me, and I kind of was chasing the money a little bit at first, and I mean the first offer I got, because high need schools have a lower applicant pool as well. At least I maybe I'm assuming, but the class the applicant pool is smaller, but the pay is higher. But again, Lisa, your point on retention, I mean, it's really hard to keep those teachers who are brand new to the profession in a high-need school. The demands are so much greater than some of these veteran teacher positions that I think burnout's so fast. It's almost like the metaphor of a frog in a boiling pot, right? You just splash out right away. Just it's really that phenomenon, I think.
And you know what?
Could I say something?
Oh, sure.
Go ahead, Jesse.
I just wanted to say I think retention is also very important. Concentrating on teachers, I think, is good, but also concentrating on school leaders, because a school leader is going to make or break a school. And my issue with resigning at my 7th year of teaching was because of lack of support from my administrators. So I think, along with talking about teacher retention or recruitment, is also focusing on making sure we have those leaders who can support their staff, who know how to support their staff, who know that a new teacher is going to be under a considerable amount of pressure, and who knows how to provide those resources, how to keep communication going, and so on and so forth. That was my issue with, at my point, deciding to resign, was because I was in 2 separate buildings, and on those 2 separate occasions, or 2 separate positions, I didn't feel supported by my administrator, so it made my job a whole lot more difficult.
Well, and that adds.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Lisa.
that adds to what Dan was talking about the unique or the hard to fill positions. So talk about hard to fill positions, and I'm biased because I'm in special education, but special education teachers, in addition to special education teachers in a rural district, they might be the only special education teacher in that district. So they might be splitting their time between 4 buildings, dealing with 4 different administrators and 4 different staffs. And, the large majority of the time, I think you're right, Chastity, is leaders are huge, because a large majority of the time, the leaders aren't specifically trained in the areas that we teach. And so special education specifically is what I know. But, I was the building expert in special education. My administrator was there. She trusted me. She had faith in what I was doing. But when I really needed that support in my expertise area, I had to look elsewhere. And it wasn't always provided by the district purely because of funding, because of resources.
Right. That's huge, because I just want to interject one point about an administrator knowing what a teacher needs. My issue with my first administrator was she had never been a classroom teacher. She had no classroom experience. And so she was new to the building. She was new to administration. She was new to the particular building I was in, and it showed in how she interacted. There was a terrible, like from the beginning, there was a terrible breakdown in communication of knowing what I needed as a new teacher, because she couldn't identify with me. She had no classroom experience at all.
And Chastity, that brings up something for me that we don't often talk about. This is already a controversial topic, but being able to talk about the things that happen to us in our professions is very difficult to most people, because they're afraid of backlash, to be honest. There's certain topics that people just won't talk about in education because they're afraid of what could happen to them, and so
Oscar,
kudos to you. Go ahead.
I say one of the comment of attempts is something that we were sort of missing here, and we've been having about a 20-minute, 30-minute conversation, and one of the biggest things that we really need to talk about is, yes, there's the teacher shortage. Yes, it could be on a national scale. Yes, it could be leaders. Yes, it could be special education. But the bottom line is teachers don't make a lot of money, all those type of things, maybe not supported. But the one thing that we need to talk about is the fact that this hurts the kids.
Yes.
And we haven't mentioned that yet, and we really
Yes.
should have. Shame on all of us for not mentioning that yet, because that's why these things need to be fixed. Because when you've got the revolving door in a school, that's hurting the kids, and that's our main primary objective. A colleague of mine, Keith Reeves, just wrote a book, Insurrection. You got to check it out. It's going to be hitting the stores relatively soon, and he talks about we got to get beyond all of these other conversations, and no conversation should start without saying, what is this doing to our students?
Right.
Everything from a national all the way down to the local. That has to be the first comment.
Well,
You know what?
I just want to make it clear that what I'm saying in regards to my experience is not being taken negatively, because I'm a straightforward person. I believe in experience being somewhat of a good teacher. And when I say in all honesty what my experience was and why I ended up walking away from the classroom, it's to help somebody, to understand that this stuff happens. This is a real world. Sometimes support from administration isn't there. How do we define a good teacher? Who defines what a good teacher is? That's a question that I have. And yes, it does affect the children, but I don't want to seem that what I'm sharing is negative, because I'm not upset about it, but I do think they're valid points in my experience that may help someone.
And Cassidy, I am totally in tune with you for the fact that in the profession, we as individuals, as teachers, as educators, have to have a lot to give to our students. And that's in a positive way. That means that we have to be positive, we have to be fruitful, and we have to be standing upright, to be able to teach those kids and to inspire them to be able to stand upright themselves. And so when we are weakened by outside forces, that affects our students directly,
Yes.
So it is a good thing that you, in my mind, that you would be able to walk away, because it means that you desire more for your students, and you can't stay in a certain situation where you will give less to your students.
Right.
Anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that.
Right. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't painting a negative picture. It's just that I was sharing from, I think, in reading the notes prior to coming on the show about experience. And experience, I believe, is a good teacher to move forward and to change things that can be more productive in the future. Mm-hmm.
I have quite a story myself, but I won't share it this time. There's a good reason why I've been out of teaching for a year. I may go back this fall, but
yes, sir.
But I do believe in that, in the idea that we have to be at our best to be able to teach.
And I'm so glad you guys brought this up, and I continue to wonder, in all honesty, on a daily basis, why that has to be said. Why it is that we have to remind ourselves that this is all about the children. And I think that there has been issues that have arisen and things that have diminished the practice of teaching, when we, as a community, as a nation, have got to understand it is never not about the children. So each of these conversations we have, and Rob's right, we probably should have mentioned the names, children, but that should always be it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's not always problems that trickle from the state or the nation.
No.
It's sometimes very close and personal right there in your building, looking at you every day.
Right.
And so that's what, had me make the decision, the very difficult decision, to walk away, because I was not going to be at my best for my students. And so, 2007, I resigned because of that, that decision, that very difficult decision, that I was not going to be my best because of things that were just not correcting themselves, no matter what I did. So, that's my experience. And as a certified administrator myself now, I hope to take some of those lessons and things that were done and maybe not done, and become a better leader for the children that I and the staff that I lead.
Lisa, do you feel that when we're talking about, We didn't mention students, and you said, at a national level, everything that we're doing should be about students. But do you feel on a national level that the people the powers that be, the people that are making these decisions about public education, have lost sight of that? Because I sure feel that way.
Absolutely.
Like I said, once again, it feels like we've become a political football, and whoever's making these decisions are willing to ruin several years of children's education just to prove a point, or to bring in a different version of education, be it charter or vouchers or any of those other things. Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in my heart of hearts, when I think about the rainbow and the kitten universe that we'd all like, I would hope that is at their core in the way that they are trying to create agendas and give us new initiatives to work on. But you know what? I think we have lost sight of it, absolutely. But I'm not just going to put it on them. I think a lot of administrators and teachers have also lost sight of that. And so I think that there's error in solely putting that on legislation and not looking at the school level as well.
I completely agree with you. However, with that being said, because I can't completely agree with you, that wouldn't be any fun.
Wouldn't be fun.
But with that being said, do you feel that it's been, to quote Ronald Reagan, a trickle-down effect, where teachers and administrators have been so blown out by the whole concept of accountability and all those things that they have gotten to themselves to the point of just feeling they've lost touch with why they went into the profession? Here's something that's happening in Pennsylvania right now that's rather interesting. It's called Senate Bill 6. And the whole idea of accountability, I'm actually writing this circular right now, and hopefully it'll be on Huffington soon, so I'm going to share a little bit with you. But the whole idea of accountability with educators, Arnie Duncan, our National Secretary of Education, accountability, it's a big word, it's a good word. But when accountability becomes a moving target and you never know where the target is, how does that become something that's accountable? We just had our big state tests. The cut scores moved. After the test was even administered, the cut scores moved. Why? There are some conspiracy theories out there that certain groups are trying to make public education look bad because this Senate Bill 6 is saying that if a school does poorly, they can take it over. They can give it over to a charter school. They can give it over to a private school. They'll fire the principal and half the teachers and put their own in. And these people that they could put in don't even have to be certified, like we were talking before. So has the word accountability become a government agenda in public education?
Sure, and I think at that, and I'm going to say a quick piece, and then I want other people to join the conversation as well. Accountability is something so interesting to me, specifically in special education, because when we talk about accountability measures, they are not even created with students with disabilities in mind. So keeping that, in the back of my mind when I talk about this, I think that accountability has shifted things drastically, but I will always go back to the kids, and I will always expect teachers to also take self-accountability in their work in the classroom. So regardless of the initiatives that are presented or the things that are handed down to us from anywhere, I think at the end of the day, we've got to do our job. And I think that takes a lot of accountability from us as a willing participant in doing our job. And of course we can talk about what's going to keep us here and if it's enough for sustaining our families and things like that, but we've got to also accept the responsibility.
Could not agree more.
Right. On that note, I kind of want to go ahead and read some of what's being said. Nicole has said that she agrees with the money aspect. She tried to find a position in Pennsylvania, but there were hardly any available, so she came to North Carolina where there would be positions open, and that she had to accept a huge pay cut from what would have been over there. And she believes that that's because they have a higher ed system in Pennsylvania that produces a surplus of teacher graduates versus other states that have maybe one or two large universities. So I wanted to read that for you guys. So yeah, I do see that a lot in the stuff that I've been reading. Like it talks about, you know, teacher shortage, and then this one article that Chastity sent us was about this guy saying there's no teacher shortage, and what I came at first I was kind of put off by his article, but after reading it, he's just talking about semantics. I mean, it's really just about there can be a whole lot of bodies in the room, but are you specialized in that certain area that we need you for? You know, are you specialized in special education? Are you specialized in math? Are you specialized in science? Are you specialized in bilingual education? Those are some of the really high need areas that that we're talking about when we talk about teacher shortages. You know, anyone want to jump in?
Well, the accountability piece I wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
I actually just got evaluated this last year for only being at the school for half a year. And my ratings, when I was looking at the numbers, I thought to myself, man, I thought I would have, scored so much higher. I was in this bracket when I thought I was in this bracket, and it's going off of maybe 3 visits of about 10 minutes apiece by an administrator. And that's a snapshot of, the real picture of what's going on in my classroom. And there's been days when, the administrator comes in and I'm like, this is the worst day for you to come in, sir. I wish you came in yesterday because there was so much learning and I witnessed it. Eyes were wide, you could hear and see the learning taking place. And so it's really hard for an individual working in a job like we are working in to stay, motivated and, happy about
Right.
doing what we're doing when we're not getting the opportunity to prove ourselves or shine on more than one account. And 45 minutes of evaluation for 50% of the whole picture is sometimes discouraging. So I bet there's a lot of teachers who are going through similar things.
Teacher
Well, and even
evaluation.
more so, we would hope that those observations are not just to put a rating on ourselves, but to better our practices.
Right.
And so if we're not getting that authentic feedback, relative to our expertise area, because right now special education teachers are measured the exact same way as gen ed teachers, and the environments couldn't be more different. So we would hope not only for the rating and for the kudos, but we'd want to hope to better our practices.
And teacher evaluation systems are going through so much change right now. It's just crazy, and it's such a touchy issue, especially for me. The district that I left, and this is the first time I talk about them, but I'm not going to name them. The district that I left in California had just implemented. 1 year into me being there, this new landmark evaluation system, they called it, and what basically it was is that they would pull teachers out of the classroom and give them a job as a teacher evaluator.
Mm-hmm.
And so these teachers that are not necessarily experts in your area and that don't necessarily have that many years under their belt, and without proper training, they just come into the classrooms and just evaluate left and right. So and they did a big press thing, and they called they went on the media, called it a landmark evaluation system because it would be more fair for teachers, because it would be fellow teachers, they called it, and all this stuff. And so we have, anyway, don't get me going on it. We have to be careful in how we implement these things and how we evaluate our teachers.
Right. And Oscar, we need to consider that again, this whole time, if there was anybody considering going into the teaching profession, we may have just been talking them out of it for the past 45 minutes. So, on the upswing of things, it is a wonderful profession.
Yes.
You have but you have to be passionate about kids.
Yes.
You have to keep your eye on the ball, you know.
Rob, you lead us to our next topic. My next question to you all is, what are possible creative solutions to all these issues? So we've been talking about the problems with it. What are the good things? What can we do, either as teachers or administrators, or if we can influence, administrators or lawmakers?
Personally, we need to. Public education needs to hire like the world's best PR firm, and get a lot of these people that are making policies that are not educators out of the system, so that true educators can be making the correct policies and can be spouting and preaching the good word of what type of public education is. Right. It's been around for a lot of years. We've put out a lot of great people in public education, and I think we need to again start PRing ourselves and get back to the idea that it is a noble profession. We are very proud of what we do, and people should support that.
Right. And how do we do something like that, Lisa? As from a teacher standpoint, how do we go about doing that PR piece from our level, from teaching level? Because of all the pressures that are put on you and all the things that happen to you on a daily basis that may wear you down. How do you keep your chin up, and how do you say to people, hey, you should join teaching, or your students, you should teach, that kind of thing?
I get it. That is the first question I get from a large majority of my teacher candidates. So those who are going into special education or general education, getting certified in both, and we've got to present their realities. Like Rob was saying, it's kind of a negative spin we've been talking about today. But we have to represent the realities of our profession to encourage the really good educators to keep going. And I think that one of the ways where we can contribute greatly to our profession is to amp up the teacher preparation programs, and to really look for candidates not only who love kids, but who love teaching. And I think there's a distinct difference there that we've got to be very careful about. Loving kids is not enough to be a teacher. You've got to love the profession. You've got to love what you do despite all of the other things. So I think if we start with teacher preparation programs and really make a conscious effort to, point out the beautiful things about the job that we do and the kids that we reach and the good that we do for our community, and start to let the community see that, and getting involved, from the teacher preparation programs into the communities, into the schools, starting there is going to be the best place, because if we don't prepare teachers appropriately, the issue resumes, once they get into the classroom.
I have a question, Lisa. Can I interject?
Go ahead.
How can you know very early on, especially in college, thinking back to my college experience, how can you know if you love teaching at that point?
It's a great question. And I do interviews for candidates every semester, and I bet you 85% of them, when I say, why do you want to be a teacher, they really do say, I love children. And I think that's a great place to start, but I've also really got to know that you're at least thinking about the teaching portion of it. So not only that I love children, but that I'm excited about their learning, that I'm excited about what that learning leads to when they're an adult. I'm excited to work with my colleagues and to meet the needs of kids who are not typically met at the general education level. So not that you should have it all, because that's why we go to college. That's why we learn. But to know that you're thinking about it, and to know that you're willing to go out anywhere at any time and volunteer, and to know that you're willing to ask your professors questions over and over and over again until you really feel like you're better prepared as a future educator. I think that's what I'm looking for, is a willingness to to learn, a willingness to be a teacher and not just to love kids.
Right.
So I think maybe instead of testing teachers so much, because they've added, additional testing for, to look for those skills, possibly up the experience, require more experience of teachers so they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I graduated college, they extended the student teaching where you had to, do student teaching for a complete year. It used to be, half the year, or 6 weeks or something like that, but then they made it longer. So perhaps we're not giving young teachers, enough experience to know what they're getting to say if they love it or hate it at that time.
And it takes a very distinct level of a relationship with the teacher preparation staff members, the faculty there, and honestly a completely different topic. But I think that teacher preparation programs and their faculty need to take ownership of teacher candidates a little bit more in order to say, I'm willing to create that relationship with you to decide whether you do want to be a teacher or whether we can find something you're more passionate about, because that's okay too.
And that has to absolutely happen early.
Yes.
Because by the time they're a senior and they do their student teaching, they've put 4 years in, a whole lot of money, and that'd be like a doctor and all of a sudden going out and realizing they don't like blood. I mean,
exactly.
You have
I think we're moving paperwork more than anything. We're just moving paperwork. We're doing paperwork. But what about the experience? Anybody can go into a classroom, sit down, take the classes, do the requirements, but what about the experience?
Yeah.
That's gonna give you the picture of, can I really do this?
So you guys talking about the possible creative solutions, Leah on Twitter with EduLive said, I want to read what she said. She said, optimism is the key in keeping teachers going. I see it daily. I am an optimist. It does not seem too much use being anything else. And I think that's such truth. I think that's one of the key ingredients of longevity
and
for teachers in the classroom. And passion, yes. Yes.
Can I add something too?
Yes, Dan.
Yeah.
To kind of go off of that, one of the programs that was being started at the school that I had previously left was called the 7 Mindsets. Actually, I have a little book right here. If you're able to see. I'm not sure if you've heard of the program, but you could check it out on Twitter even and look it up. But it was an attempt to change the culture of the school for the students, the teachers, and the administration, so there could be, a stronger community where everyone was working together in a learning environment, not against each other. And I saw a lot of improvement over the semester that I was there. And so I think that really getting the culture of the school to where everyone is on the same page and not, teachers versus students, the us versus them type of mentality, I think is really helpful. Even in one of my meetings today for my week before the kids come, one of my colleagues said that classroom management is one of the reasons why we have a teacher shortage, and that was her thoughts, because just all the challenges. If someone goes through college and gets a degree in math and says, wow, I feel so comfortable with this material, I bet I could teach it. They have no idea that classroom management will, be one of their nemesis as they enter a teacher education program or even the classroom down the road. So.
And I think that's one of those really specific examples of why there's an issue with taking away teacher certification altogether. Content area experts are very good at what they do. My husband is really, really good at what he does, but God help us if he tries to teach it to a group of students. I mean, there's just a specific skill set that we are trained with.
Lisa, is that a thing when you say that, subject matter experts, is that a thing? Is that something that we are moving to? I know you said that it's happening in Kansas, but is that a thing generally?
I think that's probably totally my opinion right now, but I think that's probably where they're moving towards. When you talk about special education, we've seen it because we will get to the point where almost anyone with some kind of teaching experience or subject matter expertise can come in and do the teaching. But I think it's just in the back of my mind because of recent legislation. But even with being a highly qualified teacher, you've got to have an area of expertise.
Right.
So some of them are coming through, like a post-baccalaureate route to gain certification, things like that.
Right. Right. So what else can we do as far as creative solutions? I mean, I myself have, like I said earlier, I've been 1 year out of teaching, and for several reasons, but I felt that I needed that break, and but I wanted to be productive, and I wanted to do something that provided to the field of education, which is the reason I created this show.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted people talking and constructing, and not a teacher's lounge, but more like a professional learning community that we could build. Actually, this is the very first time that we talk about something so controversial.
Here's the thing, Oscar. Why is it controversial? Why does this become something that's so controversial? Because educators, we're moral people. We've got morality clauses, so we never want to upset the boat. We never want to rock anything.
Exactly.
What's a double standard? What's a double standard to me is the fact that we can listen to the news and everybody else badmouth teachers and what we do, but then we can't talk about how bad some of our experiences have been.
But Chastity, that's the thing. That's the thing. It's really forbidden. It's really it's just really harmful to a lot of people to be able to talk about some of these things that are happening to them and that are happening in the classroom because they fear, fear.
And it's horrible. But how do you help one another without saying, "Hey, I've been through this"? And I guess I'm one of those people that that'll be out there saying, "Hey, this is what I've been through." I don't know. I just have courage like that.
But I think Chastity is bringing up a good point into what can be one of our next steps, is that we provide a safe and a professional environment within the districts to support teachers when they are feeling like they're at a loss or when they are feeling that they need additional support. I think that's a way to maintain retention within buildings, and to reach across districts and to get kind of creative with how we're doing professional development, how we're doing PLC times, to get creative to meet the needs of our teachers as well.
Well, I was told early in my career not to complain or really to make a big deal over anything until I received tenure. Those first 4 years, I was told to just suck it up and deal with it, and that's horrible.
Yeah. My God!
I was going through a lot of stuff. I know.
Tenure is like a completely different topic, right?
Don't get us started on tenure. Oh my God!
I know. I'm striking a match. I'm that kind of person. I'm a fireball. I'm sorry, but yes. Yeah, that's another whole show.
We need to
include tenure, but also the idea of the unions and Lisa mentioning that we'd be able to get along. As an administrator, it's sort of like this unwritten rule that it has to be us versus them, and I find that appalling. I find that absolutely grotesque because as an administrator, first of all, I want to support my teachers to the nth degree. If I could pay them, we would. We're a small district, we don't have that kind of money. But the idea of an us versus them strategy is ridiculous. And again, that creates all that kind of negative vibe going on. That we're all in this together once again, and we need to absolutely be one team. Let's just get with the program, people.
Because what that does, and we talked about it, is that absolutely takes our focus away from kids.
Yeah.
But it affects the children, so why can't we talk about it? It affects the children. What happened to me affected me very greatly. So I resigned because of it.
Sure.
I didn't want to walk away from my job. I love teaching. I had been a teacher for 6 years prior to that year, and because of what I went through, I had to say, hey, I love kids, I love what I do, but the politics and the policies and procedures and the people involved it's too hard. I can't.
And us as teachers, we change from year to year. I think, our expertise grows, and for some of us, we get tired or we get frustrated with the system. So every year is different for us. So therefore, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I don't know if you guys agree with me. I don't think anyone should have tenure.
I feel like that's a whole new Teacher Talk Live.
Yeah, that's a totally different Teacher Talk Live. You're right about that.
Agree, Oscar. There are parts that I agree with, and I agree with that statement to some extent, because there shouldn't be a safe haven for teachers that aren't good at what they do.
Right.
And I agree with you in that respect.
Right.
On the other hand, I do believe in the need for certain union rules and standards and safety nets for some of those administrators that don't do this job properly or with the right type of passion. There are administrators out there that just like to try go get you type of thing, go get them. You know, if you can fire somebody a year, you'll keep your job and all that kind of ridiculousness. So I understand the need for the unions. The problem is that at times they're harboring teachers that are hurting students.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So what about you guys? Next steps. What can we do from our end as far as for whatever platform that we have, as far as what we can do? What can we do to make things better for teachers, for administrators, for the teaching profession?
Keep the conversation going, Oscar.
I think
what you're doing is a great start. You've got to keep the conversation going.
Thank you.
As long as the conversation isn't those teacher lounge talks, right?
let it lead to solutions. Sometimes you have to share the negativity, but let it lead to something positive. And when I talk to people about teaching, that's what I do. I say, hey, these are some of the things that I went through, but to do it all over again, or as a school leader, this is some of the things that some things in place that to combat some of the negativity. Because we hear enough of that from the media, the union, everybody else. So I think we still have to talk about it, but then we still, come up with some solutions.
Right. By the way, Leah, I don't want to miss anyone offline that is following us. Leah said differentiated professional development gives teachers choice in what they need to become better at their craft. Totally agree with that. What about you guys?
I think she's spot on, and I also think that would be what I would talk about as my recommendation for next step is really looking at our teacher preparation programs and how are we differentiating for specific teacher needs. I think, I always wonder if it's a chicken or an egg kind of thing. Are we not preparing them well enough, or is it that we're not supporting them in the districts well enough, to why we have a shortage or why we have a retention issue? But we've got to take responsibility for how we're preparing teachers and who we're sending out into the field. That's where I would start.
And
I know this is.
We all need to take care of ourselves. We need to be responsible for ourselves, because when that classroom door closes, it's just you and those kids. So at the end of the day, I completely agree with Lisa's comment where she said, you've got to be responsible. You've got to be optimistic, like the one girl said on Twitter. You've got to be passionate. And you got to take care of yourself. If there's something you want to go out and learn, you may have to just go out and learn it.
Yes.
And in terms of the professional development, she's absolutely right. We do need to have differentiated PD. That's sometimes hard to do, but that doesn't give us the excuse to not try.
Right. Nicole offline, she said, as far as content area experts in classrooms, she says that she thinks it's more prevalent in areas where teachers are not being certified. She's seen it in engineering and robotic classes.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And that colleges aren't offering degrees in secondary ed robotics. So, So, as far as the areas of need, I think have we covered all of them? We said math, science, bilingual education, special education.
Special education, yeah. But science, I think we said science.
Yeah. I think
those are the main ones from the articles I've read.
Right. Oh, and I do want to point out one of the articles, the one that had the awesome Key and Peele sketch. Did you guys see that? Where the teachers are where the teachers are being drafted like good sports heroes.
Right.
I love that. That article at the bottom of it says it pointed out, like, so I'm going to call out some states. It pointed out that the salary decreases have been most in Florida, West Virginia, and North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that have been going up, it's been New York, Massachusetts, and Wyoming. So I'm headed to Massachusetts, so I'm excited about that. Yay.
Well, there's like 5 people in Wyoming, so you could probably go to the state.
Yeah.
I don't know if we included diversity in that piece in teacher preparation and teacher shortage, because being that I am African American, that was a big part. We don't have enough representation.
Getting more minorities in the classrooms is really important.
Yes, and males, and
right.
males at that.
Yes, males, all kinds of minorities. I know that bilingual education is suffering a lot in Texas and some of the other southern states because the amount of English learners is constantly increasing, and we don't have enough qualified people to take care of them. So yeah, that's another area of need, and I know that's a tough boat. So any last points that we want to make before we go off air? I know we're going over now. So and I think we've had an awesome discussion so far. Thanks to y'all.
I just want to thank you, Oscar, for inviting me. Had a blast. It was a lot of fun, and
thank you.
I learned a few things, which I always love to learn while we're going. So thank you, Oscar.
I would say thank you too, and just keeping up the conversation. So go check out education blogs and just keep the conversations going.
Yes,
right.
yes.
Watch out for fireballs like me that
We need them. We need you.
Chastity, it's important to keep. It's important to not hide all the stuff that has happened to us. I really believe that. It's
uncomfortable, but I think it's important to get it out there. It's uncomfortable.
I think other people learn from it and grow from it. So so I want to go ahead and talk real briefly about what's coming up. So tomorrow we are going live again. We're doing a relaunch of this show, and we're calling it Teachers Talk Live. And the episode's all about me, which means we're going to talk about the former episodes, including this one, and future episodes. And then after that, we have Dr. Goyne that's going to do the Goyne Digital Show. He's going to have the School Leaders Guide to Ed Camp. That's on August 18th. And then after that, we're having Social Media in Schools. And then Dr. Goins comes back on September 1. So we have some really cool topics coming up. We have social media. We have bullying coming up. And if you guys can help me find expertise in that field as well, and all those things, we do want to grow the conversation. We want to better education. So that's the whole point of this show, and that's want to make sure our viewers know that that's the point of this show, to make education better and to find solutions. That's the most important thing, to make it better for everyone out there. So anyone else want to say anything before we go?
Thank you for the opportunity, Oscar. I'm sorry for being tardy once again, but I do appreciate the opportunity to be on the show.
No problem. Thank you all for joining us. And we're going offline. Thank you, viewers.